This lecture is about realistic fiction by Dr. So-mi Cham. Realistic fiction is a popular genre among children because it is the most familiar and accessible to them. Realistic fiction tells a story that did not happen but could have happened. Everything in contemporary realistic fiction is possible on planet Earth. It brings the same moral challenges as other types of fiction, presenting the challenges particularly in a here and now setting. Characters in realistic fiction resemble real people. They live in a place that is or could be real, participating in a probable or plausible series of events. They are presented with dilemma that is of interest to today's children. They discover a realistic solution without magical helps. Characters in realistic fiction for young children are not always young people. However, children may enjoy characters who are slightly older than they are, the most. On the other hand, they might be hesitant about reading books with characters who are younger than they are. Children can benefit from contemporary realistic fiction stories as they may come to feel that they are not alone. They may learn to reflect on the choices in their own lives. They may take a humorous, enjoyable look at life. They may see life experiences beyond their own, so they can develop empathy for other people. Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe, published in 1719, is the first realistic fiction read by children. Then Mark Twain is a well-known author in the past who wrote many realistic fiction stories such as The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. The changes in American society have influenced the themes of realistic fiction books for children. In the 1960s, the American society went through major changes caused by the Civil Rights Movement, the Vietnam War, and drastic changes in the traditional family structure. Before New Realism, children's lives were depicted in more protected terms. Characters were portrayed projecting a naive point of view. Problems were almost always solvable. However, in the New Realism era, children's books started looking at the downside of life. For example, they describe children suffering from poverty, racism, sexism, war, economic upheavals, and parental irresponsibility. Characters often faced unsolvable problems or moral dilemmas. These days, topics of realistic fiction books are diversified as we have a growing number of authors with diverse backgrounds. Therefore, themes in realistic fiction go way beyond neorealism these days. For example, contemporary realistic fiction stories about families exhibit various family structures observed in today's America. These are not necessarily categories based on styles of realistic fiction. Rather, these are based on different topics or themes. Young et al. Discusses that children do not look for another good book of contemporary realistic fiction, but for another good book about animals, sports, survival, or a funny story. These are popular topics that today's children prefer. There are other various topics as you can see on this slide. These topics are not necessarily mutually exclusive. Many realistic fiction books fall in multiple categories here. For instance, sports book stories do not always focus on games, but focus on other life matters. In Tom Earl's Home Ice Advantage, the main character wants to become a hockey star. However, hockey is not a main focus in the storyline, which deals with physical abuse and homelessness. Among these categories, series books require careful consideration when selecting them because the quality of some series books can be problematic. They tend to be written according to a formula with a predictable plot, relatively flat characters, and a writing style that leans toward the unimaginative. However, some beginning readers can benefit from series books. When they have difficulty getting started with a new book, a title from a familiar series with familiar characters and settings and predictable plots can be approachable to them. I have to confess that my son started enjoying reading through Pete the Cat series earlier and Dogman series by Dave Pilkey more recently. Here is how contemporary realistic fiction works. First, details about the setting help readers to get a clear picture of how the setting influenced the way the story moves along. Just about every detail in a work of fiction is meaningful in the plot. Themes are related to an issue of contemporary relevance. Characters are created through physical description, through their actions, through their thoughts and speech, and through their relationship with others. Point of view is very important in how realistic fiction story is constructed. Not just fact, but the story is told with a particular point of view. Readers' empathy is elicited this way. Use these criteria for evaluating realistic fiction books. Consider if the story is well written according to general literary standards. See if the characters resemble real people in our world and the events are plausible. That way, children can believe that the events could actually happen. In addition, see if the plot resolution believable and not contrived to end in a certain way. Rather than formulaic stories for teaching and preaching, the story needs to be open to readers' own inferences from the story. Thank you very much for watching this lecture. I hope this was helpful for you to learn about realistic fiction books for children. Thank you.